it's Maria Willis from Card Bomb here for Tonic Studios, and today launched the newest Stamp Club release. It's called I Love You Very Much. It's a really fun release, and I want to show you some of the ways that you can use it to get the very most out of your bundle. So let's head over to my desk, we'll go through the whole release, and I'll show you some of the projects that I've made.
Okay, so here's a quick look at this bundle. We've got some beautiful fairy stamps, some great stamps for scene building, and some wonderful sentiments, along with some coordinating dies as well as some dies that can stand on their own. I thought it would be fun to show you all three of the fairies from this set as they are sort of the main element of this bundle, and then show you how they work in conjunction with some of the smaller stamps. So there are my fairies, and then I'm going to grab these little sparkles and that little magical circle there. And the sparkles are meant to be sort of like fairy dust. They can come below the fairies or off the wings, and that round one is meant to be like the wand is illuminated. So there's the fairy dust, and here's a look at the stamp that makes it look like the wand is glowing with fairy magic. Now here's a card I made that uses that fairy dust, and it's a little bit hard to see, but you can catch it shining in the light. And I just used a sparkling embossing powder, and in real life you can really see it. Now on this card I stamped the wand glow on the background and then popped the fairy up in front of it. It is a little bit hard to see on camera, but it's a really fun detail that you can add to your cards. Now moving on, I want to show you how you can use some of the elements in this stamp set to create sort of a silhouetted background look. So I'm starting out by ink blending a background piece in two colors of Nouveau Hybrid ink, and I'm going to grab that vine and the two dragonflies that come in this set, and I'm going to use the same colors that I ink blended with to stamp on my background. First, I'm stamping that vine in Laguna Bay, and then I'm going to be stamping it in Spring Heather. On the third one, I did a two-tone and stamped in both colors. Next, I stamped an embossing ink so that I could heat emboss my dragonflies in silver embossing powder. I'm wiping away any excess powder, hitting it with my heat tool to melt that powder into some beautiful silver dragonflies. Another thing that I love about this stamp set are these sentiments. I love the sentiments themselves, but I also love that they are designed in strips, which makes them really easy to add onto a card and really easy to cut out without being very fussy. Now, I stamped my sentiment crooked and couldn't use the edge of the trimmer to align it perfectly, so here's a trick. If you grab a Post-it and align it with the top of your sentiment, then as you push it through your trimmer, you'll be able to use your Post-it to line up the sentiment straight with your edge of your trimmer. And there we go, I've got a perfectly cut sentiment. Now let's take a look at some of these coordinating dies. All three of those fairies have dies which will cut them out perfectly once run through your die cutting machine. And of course it's not just the fairies that have coordinating dies, but most of the stamped images as well. Now take a look at those vine dies. Those are standalone dies, and you can use those to add into your scenes just to add some extra dimension or to add some extra fairy wonderland wherever you might think you need it. There are also 3 word dies. You are magic in this die set. And then there are 2 dies that have embossing plates. So the mushroom and the rock coordinate with the stamped images, but they also have these specialty embossing plates. And when you use those with the dies, you end up with some fantastic texture on your die cuts. And you don't even need to use them with the stamped images. You can just die cut those. Now, check out that frame. That frame is one of my favorite elements of this entire bundle. You can use it alone, or you can use it with this outer cutting edge. If you use it with the outer cutting edge, it will be sized perfectly framed on an A2 sized card. If you do not use the outer cutting edge, you can inlay that die into any size cardstock that you want. Here I've done that. You can see that the cutting frame is smaller than an A2 size card front, so here I just inlaid it into a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 sized piece of cardstock. Now you can also do this into larger pieces of cardstock like this one here. So we're going to try this with a large piece of cardstock, and one of my tips is to put the tape on the inside of that die cut frame because the inside piece is actually your throwaway. Once you've run it through your die cut machine, just use a craft pick to poke out all the little extra pieces. Now cutting this one time is the most obvious way to use it, but cutting it twice is an even more fun way to do it. So let me show you how to do that. Simply lay your die right next to your first die cut piece, and I'm overlapping that cutting edge just by a sliver. I'm going to tape it down again in the center, and then I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine again. Now you're free to play with the spacing of your die cuts to make the opening in your fairy scene whatever size you want, but I was trying to make mine a double width, so that's why I lined mine up the way that I did. Now again, you're just going to use your craft pick to poke out any of those little extra details that you want, and what you're going to notice is that we have a big the details are still there in the center. You can leave them if you want, but I wanted mine to be open, so I went ahead and I grabbed my small scissors and I just went ahead and pruned out some of those vines and some of the flowers, and then I reshaped the edge of the mushroom because I had cut a little bit of it off. And I really like the way that this ends up looking. It's going to allow for you to create a large scene. You could do 5x7 cards with this. You could do really whatever size you want. And so a way you might do that is just by simply ink blending the background, adding some of those silhouette vines in the background, some heat embossed dragonflies to add a little bit of magic, and then you're just going to grab the elements from the Stamp and Die bundle that you want to add into your scene, and you can easily build it out just by adding in all of the elements from this bundle, and you've already seen how easy they are to use. One of the reasons I love this larger format with this wide frame is because you can add all of the fairies in and all of the elements in, and they don't seem crowded. Okay, now that we've taken a close look at all of the different elements of this bundle, I'd love to show you some of the cards that I've made. Now this first card shows off that fairyland frame in white and has that shy little fairy sitting on a mushroom with some dragonflies in the background. My next card uses the fairyland frame again, but this time I did it large and made a shaker card very easily. This card has the flying fairy with the magic wand, and I put her flying over a little grove of flowers, which I stamped in the same color as the background so the fairy could be the star of the show. On this card, I used the flying fairy and paired her up with the I love you very much sentiment, and then I created an ink blended background using a stencil, ink, and some glacier paste for a sparkly background. Now this is the same fairy colored differently for a softer look, and I put her on a watercolor background. I love how she looks like she's floating above the sentiment. Now my next card is a slimline card, and this was really fun because I was able to fit all 3 of my fairies on this card. I created the background using stencils made with Stamp Club number 2, and the clouds were just perfect for scene building. I also used the You Are Magic word dies from the die set. Now this next card showcases that beautiful floral stamp, and I heat embossed it in gold and watercolored it with Nuvo shimmer powders. The layers for this card were created using dies from Stamp Club number 6. Now here's a card that will be great for any of those fun guys in your life. I colored the mushroom with colored pencils on black cardstock, added the "You're such a fun guy" sentiment to it, and it was really such an easy card to make. Thank you so much for joining me today for this up-close look at the I Love You Very Much Stamp Club bundle. This bundle is available exclusively from Tonic Studios. You can find the links for more information and links to shop in the description box below. Thank you!